If you want to know a person, not the mask, not the performance, but who they are, then you don't need to read their biography or count their followers. You don't need to hear what they say about themselves. You only need to observe two things, just two. First, watch how they treat someone who cannot benefit them, not the one with status, not the one who gives them praise, but someone without power, without position, someone who can offer nothing in return. Do they speak with respect or with disregard? Do they show patience or impatience? Because there is no incentive there, no strategy. What comes out, that's them. That is not rehearsal, that is truth. You see, kindness shown to the powerful is often admiration in disguise, but kindness shown to the powerless, that is character. Second, watch how they behave when things don't go their way, when the plan falls apart. When the delay is long, when the blame is thrown, what happens then? Do they react with rage or restraint? Do they collapse into complaints or stand still in silence? Because challenge doesn't build character. It reveals it. When the floor drops out, many will show you their hidden face, the one they keep tucked away behind smiles and routines. That face is who they are when nothing is working for them. And here is something else. Anyone can be calm when all is calm, but only the rooted tree stands when the storm comes. These two things, how they treat those who can do nothing for them, and how they act when the world doesn't bow to their will, that's all you need to see. You don't have to ask them who they are, just watch. Character never hides for long. If you truly want to understand the essence of a person, not the personality they perform in front of others, not the carefully polished identity shown in public, but their actual nature, then you must pay close attention to one simple thing: how they treat someone who holds no power, no status, and nothing of material value to offer them. That one observation tells more about a person than their reputation, than their qualifications, or the stories they tell about themselves. There is something very revealing about the way someone interacts with a stranger, especially a stranger who stands outside of their social hierarchy: a waiter, a cleaner, a delivery driver, an elderly person in need of assistance, a person who doesn't speak their language fluently, or someone clearly struggling without the means to reciprocate. In those moments, the rules of exchange, the invisible contracts of mutual benefit, do not exist. The mask of civility worn for colleagues, superiors, or audiences is gone. There is no incentive, no reward, only impulse, and that is why such moments are so pure. They allow character to speak without disguise. A person may be charming, eloquent, and admired, but if their kindness turns cold the moment they deal with someone beneath them, then their goodness is a performance, not a principle. If they offer smiles to those above them, yet disregard or dismiss those with no titles, no wealth, and no use to their ambitions, then what you are seeing is not genuine character. It is strategy. True character is not selective. It does not depend on who is watching or what can be gained. It flows from the same source, regardless of the recipient. The person who is sincerely kind will not adjust their decency depending on who stands before them. They will speak to the janitor as they speak to the executive. They will listen to a child with the same attention as they would a scholar. And they will give time and respect even when nothing is expected in return. We live in a world that is deeply transactional. Much of what people do is motivated by return, whether that return is attention, influence, wealth, approval, or validation. In that climate, the idea of doing something for someone who cannot repay it is almost radical. And yet, it is within these very transactions, or the absence of them, that a person's values are laid bare. There is a story, often repeated in different cultures, of the traveler who observes how someone treats a servant or someone of low status in a public setting. The traveler withholds judgment of the person's speech or appearance and instead watches how they behave when nobody important is watching. When the person thinks they are speaking to someone of no consequence, when no gain is possible, that is when the truth is revealed. The voice changes, the face changes, the energy shifts. A person who only wears kindness when it is beneficial will not be able to sustain it in these moments. But the one who sees every human being as worthy of respect regardless of rank, wealth, or usefulness cannot help but extend dignity to all. That is not strategy, that is essence. It does not require much effort to observe this. It is in the smallest interactions, in the way someone greets a stranger, in whether they hold the door without looking to see if anyone notices, in whether they give their full presence in a conversation where nothing is to be gained, in whether they acknowledge the existence of those who usually go unseen, and sometimes it is in silence, in whether someone bothers to look, to listen, or even to recognize that another human being is standing in front of them. There are people who believe that status grants them the right to behave as if others exist only to serve them. These people may command fear, or admiration, or even popularity, but they are not strong. Because strength without compassion is a shell, brittle, hollow, and easily broken under real weight. It takes no strength to show kindness when there is something to gain. But it takes quiet courage to be consistently kind when there is no one watching, when the interaction holds no benefit, and when the person before you offers only their presence. In those moments, what speaks is not your ambition, not your training, not your intellect, but your core. Some of the most profound examples of character come not from people of fame or recognition, but from those who live simply and treat everyone with quiet dignity. A grandmother in a village who shares food with a beggar. A street vendor who comforts a crying child not their own. A man who carries an old neighbor's bags without expecting thanks. These acts will never be broadcast. No spotlight will shine on them, but they are pure. And because they are pure, they are powerful. To observe how someone treats those who can't benefit them is to see whether they have internalized the truth that all life carries equal value. It is to see whether they have transcended the illusion of hierarchy and understand the deeper connection between all beings, that kindness is not something you earn from others based on status, but something you owe them based on shared humanity. And it is not only how they act toward the powerless, it is also how they speak about them. In rooms where the powerless are absent, when there is no need to pretend, how do they speak? Do they reduce others to objects of pity or mockery? Do they dismiss them with contempt, or do they speak with reverence, even when the person in question is far from view? Words said behind closed doors reveal much more than statements made on a public platform. You can see the roots of someone's being in what they say when they are not trying to impress anyone. True character does not pick and choose where to land. It flows equally, whether the interaction is high or low, beneficial or burdensome, seen or unseen. Sometimes the test comes when one is in a position of authority. Power does not create corruption. It reveals what was hidden. Give someone power, and if their first act is to dominate, belittle, or forget those who once stood beside them, then you now know who they truly are. And you must believe what you see. On the other hand, there are those who rise in status, but who never lose their humility. They remember names. They speak with eye contact. They say thank you. They ask questions and actually listen. These are the ones whose character does not shift with circumstances. They remain rooted regardless of the altitude. That rootedness comes from values, not opportunity, and so the test is always there, waiting in the ordinary. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or great decisions. It waits at the elevator where someone presses the door open for another. It waits at the restaurant where someone speaks with the server as an equal. It waits at the street corner when someone slows down to help a stranger cross the road. These are the daily opportunities to see, to witness what people are when no one important is watching, when the person before them holds no leverage. Some may dismiss these moments as small, but they are not small. They are sacred, because in the mundane, the hidden truths of a person shine brightest. You do not find out who someone is by asking them. You find out by watching them interact with those they cannot use. And if you watch closely enough, not once, but again and again, the pattern will reveal itself. The smile that fades when they think someone is unimportant. The attention that wanders when there's nothing to gain, or the grace that flows even when the room is silent, and the person before them has nothing to give. That grace is real, that presence is true. It is easy to be kind when you're being watched. It is easy to be generous when you know it will be praised. But when the spotlight is off, when the room is quiet, and the person before you has no influence, who you are then is who you are always. A person's true self often remains hidden when the waters are calm. Life, for many, is a performance. It is easier to play a role when everything is going according to plan, when the weather is fair, the road is smooth, and circumstances respond favorably. But this outer self, this daily mask that people wear in meetings, on screens, and in conversations, is not the whole truth. It is a surface constructed from habit, culture, and expectation. It is what people want to be seen as, not necessarily who they are. The deeper self, the one that lives beneath the image, often remains dormant until it is called out. And adversity is that call. Adversity does not introduce new qualities into a person. It reveals what has always been there. Just as the pressure of heat brings forth the fragrance of tea leaves, pressure in life draws out the essence of a human being. When plans fail, when control slips away, when comfort disappears, that is when the inner landscape becomes visible. It is easy to be composed when one's needs are met. It is easy to be patient when there are no delays. It is easy to be kind when others are kind in return. But when there is pain, disappointment, uncertainty, or failure, the person you see in those moments is not an act. It is not rehearsed. It is not curated. It is real. The mask slips, not because the person wants it to, but because difficulty demands something immediate, and whatever rises to meet that moment comes from the core. You do not need to interrogate someone's past to know who they are. Watch how they respond when life does not cooperate, when a friend betrays them, when money runs short, when they are misunderstood, when they are tired and no one is helping, when they are blamed for something they did not do. In those moments, something ancient awakens in a person, not the part that wants to impress, but the part that has been shaped by fear, memory, belief, and truth. Some become angry, some withdraw, some lash out at others who have done nothing wrong. Some speak harshly not because the moment requires it, but because they have never learned to carry the weight of discomfort without passing it on. And some, even while hurting, choose stillness. They choose silence instead of reaction, not because they feel nothing, but because they have built within themselves a different kind of strength, one not dependent on circumstance. There are those who seek control in every area of life. They plan, prepare, and construct routines so that they are never caught off guard, but adversity does not knock. It does not wait for permission. It arrives suddenly in illness, in death, in failure, in heartbreak, and when it does, the illusion of control vanishes, the ground beneath shifts, and then, what remains is what has been planted deeply over time. A strong foundation cannot be built during a storm. It must already be there. In the same way, character formed only for appearance will crumble under pressure. But the character formed in quiet discipline, in unseen practice, in the willingness to confront one's own ego, and fear that character will not break. It may bend, it may weep, it may bleed, but it will not betray itself. There is a kind of beauty in watching someone walk through adversity with grace, not perfection but grace, the ability to remain human even when hurt, to remain kind even when treated unkindly, to remain honest even when a lie would be easier. These are not traits one can put on like clothing. They are not strategies. They are roots, and roots only show their worth when the wind comes. Sometimes, adversity strips everything away. It exposes weaknesses, failures, and old wounds. People are confronted with their limits, physical, emotional, spiritual, and in that confrontation, something breaks open, not always in a dramatic way. Sometimes it is quiet, a realization, a surrender, a tear in the solitude. And from that break, something true emerges, perhaps for the first time, because when there is nothing left to protect, the self that has been hidden under armor and pretense steps forward, not always by choice but by necessity. Some discover in adversity that they are more fragile than they believed, and some discover that they are stronger than they ever imagined. Both revelations are sacred, both are useful, because to know the truth either way is a gift. It is the beginning of real growth, not the kind that is celebrated publicly, but the kind that alters the shape of the soul. The world often teaches people to avoid discomfort, to seek constant stimulation, to escape into noise, screens, distractions. But adversity refuses to be ignored. It demands attention. It invites introspection. It places a mirror in front of the face and says, "Look, not at what you own, not at who approves of you. Look at who you are when everything is stripped away, and not everyone likes what they see." There is a temptation in moments of difficulty to blame the world, to project pain outward, to make others carry what one cannot bear. This is a reflex, a survival instinct. But those who have walked the path of self-understanding know that real strength is not the ability to dominate others in moments of frustration. It is the ability to stand still and feel the fire without letting it burn anyone else. That stillness, that restraint, is a quiet power. It comes from years of listening inwardly, of practicing self-awareness even when it is inconvenient. It is the result of wrestling with one's own shadow, not just pointing at the shadows of others. Adversity does not only reveal character, it also tests what kind of peace a person carries within themselves. Some carry peace only when the world agrees with them. Others carry a peace that is not shaken by disagreement, by resistance, or even by injustice. That kind of peace is not passive. It does not ignore suffering, but it also does not become consumed by it. It remains present, responsive, awake but anchored. You will know someone's nature by what they do when they are told no. When they are disappointed, when they fail, some will react with vengeance, some will fold, but others will reflect, recalibrate, and continue with integrity. These are the people whose strength was not borrowed from success. It was built in silence, in setbacks, in solitude. There is a quiet dignity in those who can grieve without collapsing, who can speak truth without shouting, who can endure difficulty without becoming bitter. These people are not untouched by adversity, they are shaped by it, hardened in some places, softened in others, but never hollow. Adversity has carved into them depth, compassion, and perspective. They do not rush to judgment. They do not take things for granted, and they do not mistake comfort for virtue. In the end, it is not the titles people hold, or the words they say when things are easy, that define them. It is how they move through darkness. Whether they cling to blame or embrace responsibility, whether they run or remain, whether they grow more guarded or more generous. Adversity, if one allows it, can be the great sculptor of the inner life. It chisels away what is unnecessary, it humbles the ego, it forces clarity, and if one meets it with honesty, not denial, not blame, but honesty, then what emerges is not just survival, but transformation. But this is not guaranteed. Some become smaller through adversity, more afraid, more bitter, more controlling. That too is a choice, because difficulty does not automatically purify. It only exposes the direction in which someone is already facing. Those who have done the inner work will bend toward growth. Those who resist will sink into reaction. You can watch this unfold in others. You can also watch it unfold in yourself. In every moment where life doesn't go as planned, you are invited to observe not just what is happening to you, but what is happening within you, which thoughts arise, which emotions flare, what impulses appear. And more importantly, which ones do you follow? Because the story of your character is not written only in what happens to you. It is written in your response, in the choice between reaction and reflection, between anger and understanding, between collapse and courage. And the deeper truth is, adversity may be painful, but it is honest. It does not lie. It shows you what remains when comfort is gone, and whatever remains, that is who you are. It is simple to appear calm when life offers no resistance, when the days move forward as planned, when the path is smooth, when people are kind and situations are predictable. Anyone can wear the face of peace. In such moments, the surface is undisturbed, and the illusion of stability is easily maintained. But this calm, in truth, does not belong to the individual, it belongs to the environment. It is borrowed, not earned. Like a mirror reflecting a still lake, that outward tranquility reveals nothing about the depth of the person holding it. The real nature of calm is not determined by how one behaves when life is convenient. The true measure lies in how a person responds when life unravels, when the storm comes, when the winds rise, when the world no longer moves in harmony with one's desires. That is when composure is no longer effortless. That is when the mask becomes heavy. That is when the self, unprotected by circumstance, begins to show itself. There is a reason storms are used in every tradition and metaphor to symbolize life's deeper trials. A storm is unpredictable, it is loud, it disrupts, it forces a person to reckon with forces beyond their control, and in the midst of that, one must decide whether to panic, to lash out, to withdraw, or to stand still. That decision does not come from thought alone, it comes from who the person has become through experience, discipline, and self-examination. To be truly calm is not to suppress feeling. It is not to pretend that chaos is pleasant. It is to face the intensity of life without letting it tear you from your center. It is the ability to be present without being consumed, to move through pain, uncertainty, or opposition without becoming reactionary or destructive. And that capacity cannot be faked. When calm is tested, it either holds or it does not. There are people who present a peaceful face to the world. They speak softly, move slowly, and dress their speech in the language of serenity. But beneath that exterior, if there is unresolved fear, unchecked anger, or fragile self-worth, the storm will expose it. And it takes only one disruption, a delay, a disagreement, a perceived insult to bring the hidden restlessness to the surface. The calm was only an act of convenience. When the winds came, it disappeared. You do not know the strength of a tree by looking at it in good weather. You know its strength when the storm breaks. You see which branches bend and return, and which snap. You see whether the roots hold or the soil gives way. The same is true for people. The true test of emotional maturity, spiritual stability, or personal depth comes not when life is soft, but when it is hard. To remain calm in the face of intensity requires more than habit. It requires a relationship with discomfort. Many people are calm because they have never had to face resistance. They have not had to navigate deep loss, betrayal, illness, failure, or sustained uncertainty. Their peace is not peace, it is the absence of challenge. But peace that is real remains even when challenge is present. It might tremble, it might waver, but it does not vanish. To build this kind of calm is not something achieved through a single insight or a weekend of reflection. It is the product of consistent practice, not dramatic, not glamorous, but steady. It is built in the quiet moments when one chooses not to feed the inner fire of reaction, when one pauses before responding, when one watches thoughts instead of becoming them, when one learns to be with pain rather than escape it. These choices, small and repeated, create an internal foundation, and that foundation is what keeps a person steady when the winds arrive. The storm reveals what routines cannot. It asks the question, can you hold your values when the world doesn't reward them? Can you remain generous when you are met with selfishness? Can you remain honest when dishonesty offers you a quicker path? Can you remain kind when others are cruel? These are not hypothetical questions. They are questions life will eventually ask you in your own unique way, through your own unique storm. And when that moment comes, no title, no training, no philosophy matters more than the actual state of your heart and mind. That is what will guide your behavior. That is what will determine whether your calm is rooted or rented. There is a discipline in returning to the breath, in pausing to feel the body, in listening fully before speaking, not as a performance, but as a refuge. That kind of calm becomes available not because the world is quiet, but because you have created silence inside yourself, even when the world is loud. It is the silence not of avoidance, but of grounded presence. It allows you to see clearly when others are blinded by fear or noise. When a storm moves through a forest, all trees are touched by it, but not all trees fall. Some may sway, bend, or shed leaves, but they remain. The same happens with people. A calm person is not one who feels nothing. They feel everything, but they are not tossed around by every emotion, every opinion, every outcome. They have room inside them for complexity. They can carry joy and grief at the same time. They can act with urgency without rushing. They can stand in fire without flailing. Watch closely in moments of tension, and you will see the difference between those who have trained themselves in calm and those who only wore its appearance. One remains open, grounded, and responsive. The other tightens, resists, and reacts. One listens deeply, the other interrupts. One brings ease to those around them, even in difficulty. The other spreads anxiety through tone, expression, or silence. The calm person becomes a stabilizing force. The pretending calm person becomes a source of additional chaos. The storm does not only test, it also teaches. It shows us what is unhealed, where the ego still rules, where patience is still shallow. It gives us a mirror, not to shame us, but to invite us to grow deeper. A person who truly values calm will not just seek to appear calm, they will work on the inner roots. They will investigate what causes their restlessness, what stories drive their anger, what fears lie beneath their need for control. That work is invisible, often lonely, and never complete, but it builds a resilience that cannot be taken away by events. There is a danger in mistaking stillness for suppression. Some people confuse calm with avoidance. They push down their feelings, hold their breath, smile through gritted teeth. This is not calm. This is a delay in eruption. True calm does not come from suppression. It comes from understanding. It comes from letting emotion move, but not letting it decide. It comes from accepting the storm without letting it take the wheel. There is also a kind of strength in knowing when to rest in the middle of chaos. Not every storm can be solved. Some must simply be endured, and endurance requires energy. The calm person conserves energy by not engaging in battles that do not need to be fought. They do not waste time proving their point when silence will do. They do not chase every insult. They do not respond to every provocation. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is clarity, and calmness does not mean lack of action. It does not mean indifference. In fact, the calm person can act with great precision and power, but their actions are not reactions. They are rooted in clarity. They are measured. They are clean. Because they are not driven by the storm, they move through it, guided by something deeper. Watch how someone behaves not when everything is going their way, but when their will is blocked, when someone disagrees with them, when time runs out, when plans collapse, when they are accused unfairly. When they are not heard, in those moments, their real level of calm, their real emotional resilience becomes visible, and in those moments, you will see whether their calm was practiced or just painted on. The paradox of calm is that it is both ordinary and extraordinary. It looks simple, a steady breath, a soft tone, a quiet presence, but the path to that simplicity is long and often painful. It requires one to meet themselves again and again, especially in moments when escape would be easier. And the reward is not applause. The reward is the capacity to live deeply, to love without fear, to lead without domination, and to suffer without becoming hard. The calm person is not perfect, but they are available. To themselves, to others, to the truth of the moment. They do not run from discomfort, they meet it, they sit with it, they learn from it. And so, when the storm comes, they do not need to borrow peace from the outside world. They already carry it within. Character is not something that lives in words. It is not made visible through declarations or mottos. It doesn't need to be printed on a wall, shouted from a stage, or written in a bio. Character is expressed quietly and consistently through how a person moves through life. It speaks without speaking. It acts without announcing. It reveals itself in the smallest moments, often when no one is watching and there is nothing to be gained. There is a kind of truth that does not ask for attention. It simply is. The same applies to character. Those who possess it deeply are not concerned with displaying it. They are not working to convince others of their values because they are already living them. They don't need recognition. They don't need applause. Their strength comes from alignment, not performance. You can hear many people speak of integrity, of discipline, of loyalty. But those words, no matter how well spoken, carry no weight unless they are matched by behavior. A person's real character is not revealed by how well they speak about what is right. It is revealed by how they act when no one is measuring them, when there is no incentive, no audience, and no advantage to doing the right thing. That is the test. There is a quiet dignity in someone who helps without telling anyone, who chooses truth when lies would serve them better, who keeps their word even when it costs them. These acts are not spectacular. They rarely make headlines, but they are the foundation of trust, the architecture of real strength, and they are always noticed not by the many, but by the few who truly see. In a world obsessed with presentation, character stands apart. It is not aesthetic. It is not crafted through image. It is built slowly through choice after choice, especially when those choices are hard. It is the result of internal conversations that no one else hears. Moments where someone says, "I could, but I won't. I want to, but I shouldn't. No one would know, but I would." Real character does not need to be defended because it defends itself. Over time, consistency reveals everything. People forget what you say. They forget your titles, your plans, your ambition, but they do not forget how you made them feel, how you treated them, how you carried yourself when life was unfair. That impression lasts, because character leaves a trace, not in reputation, but in the experiences others have of you. Some people talk of their principles loudly, but crack under pressure. Others say little, but hold steady when the world tilts. The former draws attention, the latter draws trust, and trust is not something you can demand. It must be earned, moment by moment, in decisions that are rarely glamorous. Returning a call when it's inconvenient. Admitting a mistake, standing up for someone when it risks your own comfort, letting someone else take credit when they deserve it. These are not announcements, they are demonstrations. there is also a false version of character that is performed. It seeks praise. It is constructed around image, not truth. It wants to be seen doing the right thing not because it is right, but because it is rewarded. This kind of character is fragile. It shifts with the audience. It bends under scrutiny, and when the reward disappears, so does the behavior. It was never real. It was conditional. You can know the strength of someone's character by watching them over time, not when they are trying to impress, but when they think no one is looking. How do they treat those with less power? How do they speak about people who aren't in the room? Do they honor their commitments when the cost increases? Do they speak the truth when it would be easier to lie? These are the questions that reveal the foundation of someone's being. And sometimes character shows itself not in action, but in restraint. The person who could humiliate someone but doesn't. The person who could seek revenge but lets it go. The person who could gossip but remains silent. These are invisible victories. No one claps for them, but they are the reason some people walk with quiet confidence, not because they think they're better, but because they know they're aligned. There is a temptation, especially in a world of constant exposure, to curate a version of oneself that appears virtuous. But virtue does not live in appearance. It lives in repetition, in holding the same standards when no one's watching, in not adjusting your values for applause, in acting rightly not because it benefits you, but because that is who you are. Some people are drawn to grand gestures. They want to prove their worth in public. But character is not built in grand moments. It is built in small ones, the way you speak to a stranger, the way you handle inconvenience, the way you take responsibility. These tiny actions form the pattern of who you are. And over time, they create a presence that others feel, even if they cannot describe it. Character is not perfection. It is not always getting it right. It is the willingness to see when you've gone off course and to correct yourself. It is humility. It is accountability. It is the courage to ask, what kind of person do I want to be? And to let that question guide you when comfort or ego would lead you elsewhere. When someone walks into a room, their energy arrives before their words. You can feel when someone carries themselves with honesty, respect, and intention. You can also feel when someone is performing. You may not be able to name the difference, but you sense it, because authenticity has a gravity to it. It doesn't seek attention, but it commands respect. Character is not dependent on position or wealth or intelligence. It is a practice, a quiet one. It is built by people from every background, in every circumstance. Some of the most powerful expressions of character are found in those who have little in material terms, but everything in integrity. Their word means something. Their presence brings calm. Their choices bring clarity. In times of conflict, true character becomes visible. When emotions rise, when sides form, when the pressure builds, that is when people revert to who they truly are, not who they want to be seen as. And those who have done the work of building character will not be swayed by the crowd or the heat of the moment. They will hold their center. They will act with principle, even when they stand alone. There is a kind of freedom in living this way, when you are not constantly managing your image, when your outer self and your inner self match. There is peace. You no longer have to remember what you said to whom. You do not need to hide your flaws or exaggerate your virtues. You just live, and that freedom is rare. It is not flashy, but it is unmistakable, and perhaps that is the essence of it. Character is not meant to be impressive. It is meant to be real. It is not about looking good. It is about doing good, quietly, steadily, and without needing to be noticed. It is not a performance. It is a path, and those who walk it may not always be seen, but they are always felt.